Advisory Board to order. Citizens who desire to address the board with regard to matters on the agenda will be read and or received at this time. Were there any written comments submitted? No. Then we will move on to registered speakers. And first we have Christine Tierney.
Good morning. I'm Christine Tierney, 6415 Smoke Tree Court, Sugar Land. I volunteer at the shelter for about 6.5 years. I've seen the shelter under the committed, compassionate management of Catherine Ketchum, the chaos of no manager, the reign of terror of Don Specs, and now under its present manager, Cindy King. I and other volunteers have stayed through these changes because we feel the shelter and the animals need us. We have welcomed the order and structure that Ms. King has brought to the shelter. There is twice more staff than ever before, but less room for animals. The mission that was once so clear no longer is. The care and compassion once present is not always visible. It doesn't feel as if everyone is rowing in the same direction. The ordinances really proposed to City Council illustrate that. I attribute this to the city's long-term ambivalence about the future of the shelter. How many surveys were done? How many other shelters contacted before the choice of the electorate was finally honored and a new shelter is being proposed? This ambivalence is also shown in the decision to have the shelter managed by a city employee with no professional experience in animal services. As an interim measure, having someone well experienced with the city with excellent organizational skills made sense. But as plans are made for the new shelter, is this the course we propose to take? Supposedly, as other shelters were contacted, a list of best practices was compiled. I'm not sure these are what have been implemented. Instead, some very controversial practices have been instituted. Terminal space performed without determining how far along a pregnancy is. Animals denied recommended medication or treatment. Staff told not to treat animals as their own. Dogs put on bite quarantine that didn't bite. Public prohibited from going past the lobby to view the animals. Is it any wonder adoptions are down? New rules and policies are decided, but volunteers and the public are not informed until a problem arises. People turned away at the door and told to call it in for the animal to be picked up. Staff overheard asking if anyone had gotten their Texas driver's license number so they could be prosecuted if they abandoned the animal. Quite a little morality play there. Experienced staff and volunteers are leaving because
Time. I'm sorry. Are you counting? It's okay. I'm sorry, ma'am. Each citizen has 3 minutes. I'm sorry. Next, we have Laura Winter. Will you please state your name and address before you start speaking?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My name is Laura Winters, and I live at 74 Greensward Lane, Sugar Land, Texas. So my husband and I moved to Sugar Land in 1994. I've been a volunteer at the shelter for over 14 years. And I checked just before this, I have almost 3,000 hours devoted to the shelter. And the only reason I bring this up is because I would not devote my time and energy to any organization that I did not feel was worthy. I've seen a lot, like Christine said, we've had a lot of changes over the years with the shelter. Some are good, some are bad. The direction we're going now, between the volunteers and the staff, we are not a team. My ask, and I'm going to cut this short, my ask is, I know we have yappy hours and we have people that come in and they talk to us about how to train a dog to sit. We can do that. We know it. What I would like is for us to be able to sit down with the shelter staff and the volunteers and have an open, honest discussion about concerns that we have as citizens, as volunteers, and as taxpayers. As far as like intake of animals, a city this size, we got to be able to take more than 30 dogs. Every dog on the street is not unwanted. Okay, it could be my dog. Gates get left open. So the citizen that doesn't pick the dog up, that's going in between traffic on Highway 6, could be my dog. It could be your dog. It could be yours. Okay, that's not where I think we need to go. It's a shelter. It's animal services. We need to service the animals of our city, and I just don't think we're living up to that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Next, we have Carol Hill. Could you please state your name and address before you start speaking?
Thank you. I'm Carol Hill. My address is 327 Scarlet Maple Drive in Sugar Land, and I am a volunteer at the shelter. Our big concern lately has been capacity. We are closed for intake more than we are open. In the past, we've had many more animals over capacity, sometimes 50 and 60 dogs. A couple of years ago, there were 150 cats in the Whiskerville. I'm sure that Susie remembers well, as well as Robin. But how did we manage back then? We managed by volunteers helping. Volunteers have cleaned kennels, including isolation. Volunteers manage the front desk, answer the phone, and complete all these sleepover paperwork. Volunteers used to drive a truckload of animals to the Humane Society for spay and neuter every Wednesday. And when rescues like Austin Pets Alive and Operation Kindness in Dallas offered to take some animals, it was volunteers who drove them. Sorry, I can't get my page turned. Volunteers used to manage every adoption event. They drove the animals, often in their own cars, completed all the sleepover paperwork, and returned the animals that didn't go on sleepovers to the shelter in their kennels. Volunteers always managed the PetSmart space. All the paperwork was done by volunteers and all the cleaning. There were no employees needed. If we compare that to now, what I've personally heard from other volunteers is that they were told, you do not answer the phone. You cannot assist a family to find a perfect pet for their lifestyle. And my personal favorite, I'm not allowed to walk into the stock room to refill the water bucket and the food bucket for the cats. I was told there's medication back there. If you're implying that volunteers will steal the medication, that's very insulting. We used to be introduced to new employees because we were considered part of the team. I don't even know half of the employees. And as far as our yappy hours, which we always appreciate, all the staff used to come. We would play games. Sometimes they would wear costumes. It was very fun. In the last couple of yappy hours, one staff member came because I believe they were required to come.
I'm sorry, your time is up. We have 3 minutes. I'm sorry. And our fourth speaker is Lynn Harpham.
Okay,
Would you please state
Yes,
your
Lynn
name and
Harpham.
address?
Lynn Harpham, 4003 Brenner Court, Sugar Land, and this is Maisie, who lives in Kennel 19 at the shelter. I'm going to speak off the cuff, so just cut me off. So I just came today actually hoping there might be a few more audience members, but I wanted to just sort of tell people about the Doggy Day Out program that I've been doing, I think, for almost a year now, maybe. And any citizen can do it. And I think it's the kind of example of things that can be done at the shelter with a little bit more push from maybe other volunteers or staff or somebody that makes a dog more adoptable, right? Which is the end result or the end goal that we all want. So because I take, I don't know, 2 or 3 dogs a week out, and I take them to, Home Goods, Joann's, Academy, Lowe's, Home Depot's, Hobby Lobby. You'd be surprised how many places you can take them. And the dogs are really different outside the shelter. Yeah, this is Maisie. The dogs are really different outside the shelter. And I know, people go to the shelter to adopt them. And I've never seen a dog on its best behavior at the shelter. They're still, they don't like the noise. They're nervous. I don't know who these new people are. But when I get them outside, they're so friendly to people and so relaxed. And so I'm just here to ask, like, can we somehow try to drive more programs like this? Get the dogs out on locations somewhere, find stores that will let them spend a few hours, put them in fire stations, put them, get more doggy day out people. That's all. That's all I wanted to appeal to today. If you guys know people who are interested in doggy day out, check with me. I'll be happy to walk anyone through. It's a very easy process. You just have to be a registered volunteer with the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to number 3 on our agenda, minutes from our March 8th, approval of the minutes from our March 8th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Then at this time, we will move on to item number 4, workshop with Jennifer Brown.
And I'm actually, Cindy is going to give a presentation on this item, but just to give you a little overview, this ordinance was on the agenda Tuesday with City Council. They ultimately tabled the item pending our discussion today. And if we can all come to an agreement on the changes to the ordinance, the issue was we tried to incorporate suggestions and feedback from the board and from residents during the meeting. And that didn't go very well. So they tabled the item. And so you all received a copy of the ordinance with the tracked changes, with the references to state law. We tried to address some comments from the public. And so what Cindy's going to do is walk through those changes for us and try to answer any questions that you may have. If we can come to an agreement with no further revisions or minor revisions to be made to the ordinance, then we will be able to place it on the April 2nd agenda for first reading.
Oops, went the wrong way, sorry. First thing I want to do is I want to address some things that we heard at council the other night, but also some things that we have gotten feedback on. One of the things that we need to make sure everybody understands is our process for reunification. It's not a matter of a fact that the animals just come in for 72 hours and they get put, they become ours without any attempt at locating homes. Or if we know it's an owned animal that has a microchip, if it has a tag, if it has a collar, if there's an identified owner because somebody in the neighborhood knows the dog. It's not just a matter of it comes in, we do intake on it, and it sits in this kennel for 120 hours, 5 days, or 5 days. What actually happens is all animals are scanned, whether they're, no matter what, whether we're in the field or in the shelter. And for our known animals, the amount of attempt to get a hold of the owner, we post that they've been found on social media. We attempt multiple phone calls a day to any registered phone numbers. You wouldn't believe the amount of online deep diving investigation that goes on by our animal control officers to try and locate photos or reports of lost animals in the area where they might have been found. And if we know where the neighborhood is, going door to door to try and locate somebody who might know where that animal was. So the extensive work to reunite is the best option for all. So it's not just a matter of it's 120 days, 120 hours, 5 days, and it just sits in the kennel and nobody's trying to reach out. So it is truly an attempt to find that owner because it's the best option. So our staff does everything we can to get the animals back. So as we move through this, the other thing I need to clarify is that ordinance are laws enacted by government. They establish the rules for the operation of local government or provide rules and regulations governing public activity within the community. Ordinances allow policies to happen. Not allowing it in an ordinance will limit procedures that we can do functioning. So what I'm going to do is there's no slides to cover this other than I identified on the slide, just so y'all watching that can know. The only thing I did was I identified which ordinances we're going to review. Y'all have a copy of them. I don't have them for the slides. We'll just go individually by them. The first thing is I didn't put this one in there, but it's the fees. The fees have been established at the very top. I didn't identify that. However, so for the first one is going to be 3-11. There were a couple of changes. One, we used to have vicious animal as a definition. We have changed that to aggressive animal instead of a vicious animal, and we have defined that. Then what we did was on dangerous dog, our dangerous dog previous ordinance, or current ordinance, I should say, actually identifies an animal versus animal, which is not per state. So that's why we updated it to aggressive animal, which includes animal to person or animal to animal. But dangerous dog is only by state definition, animal to person. So that's why that was updated. The other thing we did include, and we'll hear about it more later, is the fact that the Dunbar scale. The Dunbar bite scale is how we will be doing investigations, so we have that updated later. If you look on the next page where it talks about rabies certificate, the only reason that's highlighted is it is a state law. The one thing we did take out of that, which actually it's further on, so no, that's state law, so that's why that one's highlighted. So the next ordinance to talk about with a change is going to be 3-25. (3-25) is provisions for animals that are required. And what we did was we had some provisions in there, but we lined them up with what is actually in the Health and Safety Code subchapter E. In addition to USDA regulations 9 CFR 3.105. And that one is not listed as an update for y'all, but 3.25A2 is actually a USDA regulation. The next change is going to be 3.27. And essentially the 3.27 was updated because state health safety code changed. And so we updated it to reflect the health and safety code updates. And as you can see, 326, 327, and 328 are all health and safety code. That's what they're marked for. (3-33) is our community cat program. And this is a protected program that, as far as not being prosecuted for abandonment, to have this program. So it is now allowed in the state. And then we did add or person who provides care, including food and shelter or medical care, to one or more community cats based on a community member's input on that. So that was why that was added, when initially it just had talked about any rescue or humane organization, that an individual can register with us and let us know that they are doing this TNR program, the community cat program.
Hey Cindy, is there a possibility to add something to the effect of that we will evaluate the animals/kittens that we get through this program for potential of adoptability instead of just.
These
putting
don't
them-
come to us. These go
go
straight to,
straightly
these
to
go
the vet?
straight to the vet.
Okay,
These do not come through the shelter. The community cat program, they do not come into us.
all right, thanks.
Might also add, Tuesday night, the mayor had some concerns about bond. There's no bonding requirement to participate in this program. We did determine that there was a release form that was developed for the pilot program. We would then just have the individuals register and sign that release form, basically saying like, you're responsible for your own car insurance and all that. So I'm not quite sure where that was coming from, but wanted to make sure that we had that issue resolved. And we did check with Best Friends.
Correct.
And they did not see any issues with having individuals participate.
Okay, just throw just another thing out there. If we ever do get a full-time veterinarian again, would we be able to amend this to include that we will evaluate?
If we're doing spays and neuters in the shelter, we have to have a surgical suite to do that.
Well, when we have our new shelter, maybe we will.
Dream big. So 3-36, 3-36, we did update a little bit. Again, it's going to fall in line with state regulations. So these are state laws that were updated. So that was the only change listed on that. Again, taking away the fact that it is not dog on dog or dog on other animal. It is only dog on person for this.
I have a request on this one.
On
on the
3-36,
3-36, can we add or amend number 5 to include having a sign and a transportation that someone is transporting a dangerous dog? So in case any of our lovely animal service officers are approaching one and they don't know it's a dangerous dog in that car, you're exposing them and anybody else who wants to help an animal that's caught in a car. It was in there under under 4, under D4, the sign that states a dangerous dog must be posted in the window of a vehicle transporting. I would like that back in.
it was under what previously?
It was under, I'm going back to like one of the first ones that I printed out. It was
I'm looking
under-
at the current, I'm just looking.
It's like the very last.
I'm looking at the current one
All right, hold
versus.
on, let me find it on.
I found it. It's F. It's F
Okay.
in the current one.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we can amend number 5 just to include, signs for transport and transportation of such animal or something would be fine, instead of making it another separate item.
Right, we'll follow up on that one. I've added that as the current language on that one. Yes, ma'am. So that was the update on 3-36. There's no update on 3-37. It's just notifying y'all that that's state law. And then 3-38 and 3-39 pretty much in their entirety are mirroring our processes for dangerous dog and aggressive animal, so that we can prosecute anybody whose animal is attacking other animals, because right now it's a civil suit. So that way we have a little more what we can do with that. And as far as identifying the aggressive dog, it will have to be it'll have to be registered. It'll have to have an annual renewal. It'll have to be maintained the same as a dangerous dog. So anybody that has a dog that has attacked an animal is going to be treated the same as declared, will be treated the same as what was declared as a dangerous dog. The next one is going to be 340. What we have done on this is that we've identified that we will actually utilize a tool, which you do have a reference for on your slide, on your flow flash drives. But that is going to be the Dunbar bite scale. The Dunbar bite scales, anything at a level 3 or above, essentially that it's going to puncture skin. Anything above a skin puncture will be investigated by our animal control officers.
I see that's a change because I questioned it from the council meeting, you said 3 or above, but then in our last version of the ordinance, it said 2. So it
It
obviously
is-
got updated.
It's a 3 because a 2 is only a bruise.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So-
it said 2 before and now it says 3. which
Correct.
sounds
3
correct.
is
was
the correct. It was
corrected
a typo on the last one. It was incorrect on the other. It's a 3 because 3
Right.
is a break-in skin, 2 is a bruise.
Great. Okay, glad that.
So
got
yes,
corrected. Okay.
yes, yes. We don't have the manpower hours to investigate every bruise.
We had corrected that in, I think, the version between when we had sent it out before the last board meeting to when
Before
we actually
council.
posted the meeting. It was brought to my attention and we did get that corrected, and that's what went to council. And that's what was on that's what was on this agenda. So, yeah, too many meetings, sorry.
341 through 343 and 345. Those are highlighted in yellow as changes, but realistically, all it is numbering changes. That's why they're changed. The wording hasn't been changed. It's just the numbering because we shifted everything. There's no change on that. The rabies coverage is state law. And then 345, again, they did some changes on the, just updating the numbering system.
I have a question on 345 that's not highlighted, and this is just me. Anytime there was a euthanasia comment, not a licensed veterinarian has ever been addressed in this ordinance. That was the problem of the last time, that the veterinarian was never addressed, that they needed to have a veterinarian to euthanize. And just again, for my knowledge, since I do not volunteer, when animals come in impregnated, do we go through a therapeutic abortion, or what do we do with the dogs, the bitches with the impending birth? That has not been addressed either.
That's addressed in policy. We do terminal space.
Okay, but.
That is addressed in policy.
Okay, but it's not addressed in the ordinance.
Correct. Ordinance and policy aren't always going to be hand in hand. Ordinance
No.
allows practices to happen, and then the policies drive what happens.
Right, I understand that, but the policy that is dictated to happen is not addressed in regarding a pregnated bitch that comes in with babies, be it dog, cat, whatever.
It's addressed in policy, correct? It is not an ordinance. In
Hmm.
ordinance, we spay and neuter prior to adopting out, and that is, that's covered under Health Safety Code 821.
Okay, so if it's impregnated, we're not even messing with it, right? It's not being addressed in the ordinance?
Not in the ordinance, no, ma'am.
Okay, well, I question that. Okay, thank you.
The other thing on 3-45 is we are electing to strike 345 D4C. So it's got the blue line on it on your paper there. It,
Could you explain why?
yes. So what this is referring to is if an owner comes to get their animal after it has been off of stray weight, they are not, which is when the payment for a fee for sterilization happens. If they come to get it after it's off of stray weight and we've spayed it, we're not going to get that letter.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the clause that you took out.
Yeah,
That's what
she's
I'm talking about.
So what it's
used to-
supposed to mean is, it used to say, if you received a letter from the licensed veterinarian, that the letter was dated prior to the impoundment, saying it shouldn't be spayed or neutered, but if they come to get, so this is referencing a payment of a fee. So if the fee is, we can't assess a fee if we don't spay it. And if we don't spay it, there's no need for a letter. And then we added in its place, the animal is redeemed prior to sterilization services. So this is all referencing when that fee would be due.
Okay, but I'm trying to address the issue not about the fee, but about actually not performing the operation.
This
Not doing-
clause is about the fee.
If there is a letter of the sort that was described, do you honor the letter and not do the
We wouldn't
procedure?
have that letter if they don't come to see us prior to us getting it spayed. If they reclaim their animal, we don't require spaying or neutering. If they reclaim it within the 5 days before it gets spayed or neutered, we don't require it to get spayed or neutered. The city doesn't require spay or neutering of animals,
All right.
other than the ones we adopt out from the shelter. The ones we adopt out from the shelter, Health and Safety Code requires that all of our animals have to be spayed or neutered.
So it was more of a semantics of the order of operation. If they redeem it before the wait period is up, we wouldn't have sent it for surgery anyway.
Yeah, there's no reason.
and then there's no reason to have the letter.
Surgery wouldn't have happened earlier.
Correct.
Right.
for any reason.
And if they're not fit medically
Yeah.
to have a surgery, we're not going to send them for surgery.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, they don't get spayed or neutered until they're medically cleared to get spayed or neutered.
okay.
So on that, we have, like I said, we removed that paragraph in blue, and then we added the animal is redeemed prior to sterilization, which was a conversation we had that we're not requiring sterilization.
Right.
So, the last one on this, I believe, is that we have removed, or we are proposing to remove under F, just a further down, the euthanasia. And again, this is per a hearing, the judge may order this. However, we are going to remove space limitations from number 2. Euthanasia, the animal due to health, temperament, or other evidence. Euthanasia is appropriate disposition of the animal, removing space limitations.
Is 345 open for further comment?
Sure.
Okay, then I'd like to go back to some of the provisions that are, for example, in section 338 and 339, which talk in terms of certain occurrences making the animal become the sole property of the city, subject to disposition as the animal services manager deems appropriate. That's in a number of places in 338 and 339. But interestingly enough, 345 I, subpart I, expands that by saying that that what could be appropriate is adoption, transfer to a rescue group, or humane euthanasia. I'm kind of curious why that one section goes to the trouble of spelling all of those things out. And if it's going to do that, I would think that we should consider eliminating humane euthanasia as one of the specifically identified consequences of just picking up your animal too late.
I'd like to address that if we can. If you remove humane euthanasia from this section, then we can't ever euthanize any animal for any reason, including medical. So this,
I don't
this-
understand that because it isn't in all the other sections
yes,
where I assume that it actually would be read into those sections without being listed, unless you're telling me that that doesn't exist under 338 and 339, which I don't think you're doing.
So 345 is regarding impounded animals.
yes. They're talking about different things.
This is a section regarding impounded animals. So it talks about the process of doing the impounds.
Yeah.
The others were talking about different things, whether it was the dangerous dog or the aggressive dog. The aggressive dog is the specific one you were asking about, which will be handled differently than
But those dogs are impounded, are they not?
not necessarily. Those aren't necessarily impounded.
These could be owned animals.
Yeah,
338, 339.
aggressive and dangerous dogs can be
Okay.
owned animals as long as they remain restrained
Of
per
the-
the regulations here.
Yeah, but for example, in 338 F, which talks about this language, it talks about it in terms of the owner of an impounded animal.
Mhm.
So that in this particular case, it's talking about impounded animals and what happens there.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
you know, if you have this general language without the specific language, and you say, well, gee, if I took out that specific language, I wouldn't be able to do that. Well, you wouldn't tell me that under 338.
Under 338F, if the animal then is impounded and if they don't comply within 15 days, then the animal becomes the city's property. Then it becomes subject to 345. Is that right, Meredith? So once the impounded animal, so it says if the impounded animal has not complied with the orders, basically in subsection E, within 15 days, that the impounded animal is aggressive, then the animal will become the sole property of the city and is subject to disposition as the animal services manager deems appropriate. In that case, then that animal would fall under the provisions of 345 of impoundment and disposition of impounded animals. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think it's talking about different ways. So this is impounded animals coming in through stray weight or being picked up in the field. 338 is talking specifically about aggressive or about dangerous aggressive animals. Okay, sorry, I can't keep those straight.
Okay, but are you saying that with respect to the part that deals with aggressive dogs,
Mhm.
that humane euthanasia is an option covered by 338, even though it is not mentioned?
It would be, yes.
Because 338 will drive it into 345. Once we impound it, then it falls under here.
Well, again, my actual concern is that we don't have a situation under 345 that isn't a 338 situation, where you just have a dog running at large
Mhm.
is brought in and is technically impounded because you brought them in off the street. And maybe you're going to tell me it's just policy and how you do it. But I just wouldn't want euthanasia to be a consequence of someone picking up a stray and somebody arriving to recover them too late.
Correct. So our next agenda item, we're going to talk about the euthanasia policy.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of conversation about what's in policy and what's in the ordinance. And so we want to have that conversation with you all. We want to have everyone clearly understand what is in the policy, and then make some recommendations going forward. So not to move on to the next item, but we are going to talk about that.
Okay.
But, yeah, that would, in that case, it just doesn't automatically go to be euthanized. We do follow,
I would assume
we
it does not.
follow policy.
I would
Yeah.
assume it does not.
I mean.
But
we
if you
wouldn't be-
but if you remove humane euthanasia from ordinance right here, none of our animals could ever be humane.
I don't believe that because you just
It
told me.
doesn't, it doesn't, I understand, but this gives us what we can do with our animals. So this is identifying that
Yeah.
we can, that is part of our process.
And if you removed it here, then the dangerous animals or the aggressive animals couldn't be euthanized either. Okay, Meredith is gonna.
You most certainly can destroy a dangerous or aggressive animal by court order.
Right.
So that is covering all of the changes.
I have also some items with number 45 that I have questions on, or clarifications need to be in the ordinance. Under G2, which is the animal services is unable to find a suitable foster to bottle feed the animal. One, if we are, what we need to do is set a time, because are you going to give it a day that you can't find an appropriate foster, or a week? I mean, a time.
If you
limit
can't
has to
find
be-
an appropriate foster for neonates within 2 days, the suffering that they will have if we can't get them out of the shelter.
Well,
and
but you
have
don't
somebody
have
bottle
2 days.
babies.
We don't know what. you're-
That's what I'm saying
Yeah.
is as far as that goes, it's going to depend. I mean, you would have to literally like a neonate can go 3 hours without food. A 1-week-old can go this how long? So that's part of, it's preventing their suffering, because if we don't have fosters and we have hundreds of kittens, we are not set up to have a nursery there. Somebody's feeding them around the clock.
It really depends on the age of the
Mm.
kitten. A 1 to 2 day or even a less than a week old kitten can only go a few hours without being fed. If we don't have someone to foster them, leave them overnight in shelter, they are going to suffer. Within 6 hours, they will begin to
Fail to thrive.
begin to fail to thrive.
Right, they would
And
need
once they hit
that.
a certain point, it's really hard to get them back.
All right.
And it's not fair to them to let them sit in the shelter and suffer, it's just not fair to them. I hope we never get to that situation.
Well, maybe we should report it saying animal services made every effort and was unable to find a suitable foster to bottle feed the animal in a given time or something on that line. But I mean, that just sounds like, okay, we haven't been able to find anyone. We're just going to put it down. I mean, we need to make it a little bit stronger that people know that we are making the attempt, that we're not just doing that. And, put something in about the time limit, like.
Which
you
number are
know,
you looking at? Sorry, I know which one you're talking about, but I can't find,
It's the euthanasia of the bottle babies.
what number is it?
G.
345G,
Thank you.
yeah.
G2, sorry.
So,
I thought I
so
said-
G was actually that language we just added to, we ended up combining what was two, one and two into
Mhm.
to one statement. And so there wasn't a qualification on this statement at all. And so we felt like we needed to put that language in there because without it, there was no caveat.
actually
There
had-
was no caveat on.
There was no finding a
There
suitable
was nothing
foster.
referring to finding a foster. And
Yeah.
so we tried to insert this language to put those constraints around it
Mhm.
purposely, because we want to have it say we would make every effort. So,
Well, then we should put that down. That we made
maybe,
every effort.
yeah, and that I think again would go into our euthanasia policy of, what are the criteria for neonates? We could address it there. I don't think we can get that specific in an ordinance.
Maybe
There's just
just
too many
age
difference.
appropriate feeding schedule,
Yeah.
since you're saying that it occurs at different, and I know myself because I've done this, it
Yeah.
occurs
I'm
at
okay with that.
different
Meredith's
schedule
good.
times for
Mhm.
almost daily, in the first
Especially when they're
weeks.
growing, when they're growing, it's like 3 hours, 6 hours. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and when we leave the shelter at 5 o'clock and nobody's back until 7 or 8 the next morning.
Mhm.
Yeah,
We know
that's
that.
the issue. Okay. Hopefully
Right.
that will.
Okay, and then I had one other thing. And basically, it seems as if you, Cindy, have the sole gift of giving somebody life or death because it's only saying that you as this animal services manager decides who gets euthanized or not. I thought when we were discussing procedures, we were having like a committee sort of.
There is a committee. This language was put together by our attorney group and our prosecutors. This essentially is, my understanding is it's following best practices of shelters. Okay, sorry, then it was prosecutors, it wasn't Meredith. So, but yeah, no, again, there is a policy and procedure that is more detailed than this, and it is a committee. It's not an individual. We don't want to put that on any individual ever.
I think our ordinance should say that.
And going back to my question, I totally agree. I mean, if a impregnated animal comes into the shelter, what do we do with it? Do we put it down immediately? Do we let it come to having their litter? I mean, I totally agree with Robin. We need to have more of a format as a time frame because we're starting to get into cat spring now. And so what do? Do we, I mean, this ordinance says you don't even address it.
Correct. It's addressed in policy. After the 3 to 5 day hold, they go in for spay or neuter. If they have kittens or puppies before that 3 to 5 days, then we have kittens or puppies in the shelter until they are fostered out or old enough to be spayed, neutered, and adopted out.
I'm okay with the 2 changes recommended to say, I think it was F2 to make it say to make every euthanasia after making every effort. Sorry, or is it F2? Sorry. Animal services, and we're going back to G2. Back to the kittens, I'm okay saying is unable to find a suitable foster after making every effort to bottle feed age appropriate animals.
And I think Meredith is going to insert that language for the age appropriateness.
And then Under disposition, I'm sorry, which one was yours again?
We're 45G,
Okay, 45, let's see.
F and G.
Where's the animal? Okay, where it says manager? Could we say, what about if we said animal services manager or team? Would that meet all the requirements? Would that meet all the requirements?
Where are you?
On I, an animal will become city's property and subject to disposition as the animal services manager deems appropriate. What if we said animal services manager or team? Management.
Management, I'm fine with that.
Meredith, are we okay with that? Can we delegate to a management team by ordinance? Yes. Okay, we're good. Do you have an issue, John? Okay. Yeah, we'll get a draft out to everyone. Yeah. So basically, she's taking it not to say animal services manager, not one person. It would be the animal services management team. And I don't know if we could even add a reference to in accordance with policy and procedure. No, can't say that. But then the management team would be, yes. And the team would be governed by policy, and that all city employees are held to policy. That is our next item. Yes.
Okay, even though this isn't one of the ones that we were discussing changes, since you're having me review the ordinance, I came up with something under 346. A3, basically that the prospective owner agrees to have the animal sterilized. I thought our new procedures now are not to even put any animal up for adoption in our shelter that is not already spayed or neutered.
Right now, the policy and procedure is not, but if an animal were to get adopted out, we have to go back in this, they have to abide by this.
Okay. And then on B1, I know other shelters and rescues basically have people fill out applications to make sure they're suitable to adopt an animal. So, and I would like to add, but not have proper facilities or finances to contain and care for the animal as required by the article. I know occasionally back when I used to work the desk many moons ago, there would be people couldn't even pay the $20 adoption fee at that point. I go, if you can't afford to pay the $20 adoption fee, you can't afford to buy dog food or cat food. So, I mean, if you have anyone balking at paying any of the fees, then I don't think they can afford to have an animal and not suitable owners. So I would like to add finances in there. I know it's a nebulous area, and unless you have someone fill out a.
My concern with that is I don't want staff to be judging someone's finances. But generally, and with the front desk staff, if they don't feel comfortable with the person wanting to adopt the animal, they won't do it. We've even refused to let animals go on sleepovers because of things people have said kind of offhandedly to staff about, oh, I just want this kitten to have for spring break for my kids. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. So they're in there, they're listening, they're learning. And I don't know that I want to put staff in a position to where they're having to judge someone's financial capability. They're not trained to do that.
Speaking more on that, actually, there's copious amounts of research that having approved finances, that's just a barrier to adoption.
Yeah.
First of all, we are already teaming at the seams with animals. We do not need to require people to prove their finances. First of all, finances change at the drop of a hat. Second of all, poor people deserve to have animals too. What is the correct amount of finances? What's the magical number? How do you prove that? You know, and we have so many animals. I mean, if they want one, they should, and they want to try to care for it. Maybe they need education, you know, maybe we can help them out with a bag of food, you know, food drives. I mean, there's so many more things that we can do as a community and as a shelter. We should not be requiring people to prove that they have enough money just to adopt an animal. We need to be removing barriers to adoption, not creating them. Okay.
I sent you an email very late last night. So I don't know. Okay, so you've got all those points. Okay, then there were two I didn't send you after 3 a.m. Sorry, thunderstorm. I think we discussed 3:45, that the times are too short. Has anybody come after the 5 days? Like if they come out, just so that it's said in the open meeting, if they come and it's a holiday and it's a weekend, are we able to get the dogs out within the 5-day period?
Yes. We will do return to owners even on days we are not open to the public. So if we have staff there, and we've actually had animal control officers meet owners at the shelter, because the animal control officers are the ones that are reaching out. They're the ones leaving the phone messages and things like that at the numbers we do have, if somebody's microchipped or whatever the case. And yes, they will meet after hours. They will meet on weekends. We've met on holidays, Sundays. Our job is to get that animal back to its owner. And so the less time it spends in the shelter, the better off everybody is.
Great. And then, sorry, I was going to wait till the end to everything, but to go back to 3:14, this is the one I didn't have time to email you on.
I was like, that's not on the list you sent.
No, it wasn't. This was, but yeah, I got an email when I woke up today too. Somebody spoke to me about I know this isn't anything we changed, but the unreasonably noisy animals. Some residents have come to me and they feel like other residents have been calling animal control on them just for minor neighborly disputes and Hatfield and McCoy situations. Can we define loud and long enough or unreasonably disturb any better? No? Okay.
It's
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And then on 3:20, this is my last comment here on 3:25, because I think we're talking about the Dangerous Dog Act, right?
No, this is provisions for
Oh.
animals.
Okay, sorry, which the Dangerous Dog Act is, okay. Do we explicitly state, or can we explicitly state that this allows the police to take a dog when it's in danger? It's just to make it easier.
You still have to go through the legal process of the seizure. You still have to get a warrant. You can't just go in and grab a dog.
I'm talking about for the inclement weather.
You still have to go through the legal process of getting a warrant.
You can't just, it can't be freezing and you can't see, the neighbors can't, because I know lots of neighbors called the dogs last year. So even with this act, the police still can't take the dog right away if it's sub-zero
My
temperatures.
understanding is you still have to get a warrant. Meredith, is that? Okay.
Okay, well, I hope you get that standing order.
Did you have any others, or did the others are all good? Okay.
Cindy? This is mentioned in the ordinance, so I hope it's okay if I bring it up. Something's been bothering me lately. We seem to have had a lot of shelter dogs go in quarantine And when I originally looked at information and it's rabies quarantine, and I mentioned to a staff member, well, why are they in rabies quarantine if we know they've had a rabies shot? And the person said, well, it's actually a bite quarantine, which I'm sure is true as well. And again, this isn't anything about who's in charge of the shelter now versus who used to be. I'm just wondering why we have more shelter dogs in quarantine, why they're in quarantine at all. I don't think any of them are aggressive or vicious. I worry that, and this is just concern for the behavior of the animals, that a dog, and I know even you have said that some of them were provoked. It wasn't even their fault that they're in quarantine, that something reacted and they bit somebody, and some of them I've only seen scratches, but I know some have broken the skin. And we put our shelter dogs in quarantine when they've been known more or less to be walkable, sociable dogs. And I just feel like, why are we punishing them? They don't know what's happening. They don't know why they can't get out anymore. Then they're only made to go more kennel crazy. And again, to throw that out there, I don't remember this ever being the case. And I've been there a long time too. And I seem to remember one 6-month-old puppy that I had taken to PetSmart 2 or 3 times. She was fine. One day she must have gotten mad because she was the last one I walked, and she bit the whatever out of my hand, broken the skin. And I think she went on a sleepover the next day. And again, I don't remember this case, as a dog walker. And so I'm wondering if something's changed, if we're taking the laws too far. I mean, an owned animal that bites, at least they can stay in their own home with plenty of room to run around. And we stick ours in their kennel and don't pay any attention to them, and they don't know what they did wrong. And as you admitted on at least one of them, it wasn't their fault. So can you address that for me?
It's a rabies, it's a local, it's a state regulation on rabies control. Any
Even
bite,
if we know they've had a rabies shot.
any bite, it doesn't matter if it's your dog and you have to do a home quarantine, which means that dog's not supposed to go outside, not supposed to have any contact with any other animals or dogs, or other animals. And the same thing at the shelter. We are treating bite cases per the standard set, whereas before that was, and it said that, so even though it's had a rabies vaccination, it still goes on a rabies quarantine. Any dog that there's an investigation on, it's a 10-day quarantine if they've had a rabies shot. If they haven't had a rabies shot, it actually is a much longer quarantine.
I understand that, but I still wonder if, I don't know, that we're, I know it's the law. I just,
It's the law.
okay.
Some of the scientific basis, just at least for the 10-day quarantine, even with vaccine status known, is just because it's not all vaccines are 100%. So that's part of that reasoning.
Is there any way to make the quarantine more comfortable?
They're in 10-day quarantine with minimal interaction.
And they are still being walked.
They
by
are,
staff.
yes, staff is still taking care of them.
And that is to protect the volunteers in case something were to come up during that quarantine. They are being evaluated by our Rabies Control Authority, which is Cindy. A
And
couple
the,
times during that,
so
I know like
there's a requirement to
certain
check
days.
them on the 1st, the 5th and the 10th day. And then also the vet techs, assess them twice a day.
So they are getting interaction. It's just not from the volunteers. And that's just for the protection of our volunteers.
And it provoked or unprovoked, it's a bite. It's, any other questions?
So then are we comfortable making a recommendation to city council with the changes that we've discussed?
In 345, I think someone raised the issue of making the 72 and 120 hour periods longer. I'm not sure how that got resolved.
I don't recall any discussion
I
about
don't- I-
that. Basically, what that does is at 72 or 120 hours, it makes the animal adoptable.
Or available for spay or
And it
neuter.
doesn't mean that anything else is going to happen. I mean, we can either send it to a rescue, we can go get it spayed or neutered. It's to keep the movement of the animals through the
If you-
shelter.
The longer you extend it, the longer its stay is going to extend in the shelter.
There are models that show kind of the backup, and we don't have a big flow because we have so many long stay animals. But the idea is the shorter stray wait, ideally you get the animals moving and that allows you to have more space. But it's not necessarily working because we do have such limited capacity and so many
Yeah,
animals.
I understand that side of it. I guess my concern, since the euthanasia word is in there, is that it would grant a little more time for owners to be found before that would be an option. And you're going to tell me that turns partly on policy and so forth. But to have an absolute period in there in which euthanasia could not happen because the time period is a little bit bigger is something that I thought was raised, and I'd like to ask for opinion and input and ask whether anybody thinks that that's a good idea.
I'm okay with an extra day unless there's a reason not to have it.
Well, we also can't adopt them out.
You can't adopt them out. They're going to be in the shelter longer. And if they miss a surgery day, then they're going to be in the shelter an extra time period.
Mhm.
Yeah, there is that. That's the other side of the argument.
Correct.
And whether it's more important to have that extra day or two to look for an owner or to proceed with that is what we're talking about.
Do we have, I don't know if we have stats of how many owners are coming in saying, oh, you had my dog and it got adopted out. I think the numbers of that, I think that's almost next to non-existent. I mean, I worked there for a year and the majority of these dogs that come through, and I'm saying dogs because there's just not a lot of cats going through right now, they're dumped. There aren't owners coming for these animals, okay? The ones that do have owners, their owners they're pretty quick. And you know what? Our staff is combing Facebook. I can't say we, sorry. Your staff is combing Facebook, combing Twitter, combing social media, doing the legwork for these owners too. So if the owners want their dogs, they're looking for them and they're coming to get them, and they do. I mean, half the time, so many days I came in and there was a new animal and I'd, go to vaccinate it or go to work it up for something and say, oh, don't bother. Like, I've already been on the phone, owner's on their way. And believe me, like the owned dogs, like their owners come for them. The majority of these dogs that are here are dumped, and to add another 24 hours, I mean, that can set a whole animal a week back for surgery. They can't get adopted out before they have surgery. I mean, just and especially now that I'm not there to do surgery every single week, like once or twice a week, now it's an extra mental gymnastics just to figure out who's going to get scheduled where, who's available to drive to surgery. I mean, it's just not worth it. And all these dogs with these imaginary owners, like they don't exist. These dogs are dumped. These animals are not wanted by their people, by their breeders. And that's just prolonging their stay at the shelter. That's prolonging the flow. And that just wouldn't be a good idea. The owners are given plenty of time, and I've seen cases where, maybe I'm thinking of Fort Bend, but I have seen cases where the ACOs have a hunch like, oh, this is somebody's animal. Like, I'm going to go ahead and extend. And Cindy, please correct me, but I believe the officers or even you guys choose to extend some of the holding periods just by choice. If you feel like there is an owner out there for that animal, or like if there's some sort of like,
One example is a dog comes in with a collar on. Even though it doesn't have a tag, my assumption is still that it's owned. I mean, somebody put a collar on that dog. Now, was it somebody that found it as a stray, put a collar on it? I don't know, but somebody spent the time and effort to put a collar on the dog. So a collar, even without a tag, is going to be considered like an owned dog. So yeah, I mean, but there was no microchip there. And we have one in the shelter now. She still hasn't been claimed. She's still there, but we gave her the grace of 5 days because she came in with a collar, even though she wasn't chipped, didn't have a rabies tag on, couldn't find any way of figuring out where she came from.
The 3 days really, it's not for us to try and shove the animals out the door. It's really allowing us to take ownership of the animal so that we can go ahead and sterilize it to prevent any future unwanted litters. It prevents, it's not so much a chance for the owner to find, because if an owner comes forward, I mean, we try to do right by them. And, we're not trying to hide the animal, but extending that holding period, it prevents us from getting it out and getting all of them out, not just that one animal that may have an owner that's just one day, and that still takes, like, that animal goes to get surgery on day 4. They still have that extra day because that animal has to come back that day of surgery anyway. So, I mean, and then if we extend it one more day, like, what's the magical number then? Like, let's extend it 2 weeks then, because, maybe the owner's out of town. Okay. And
Okay. At least I wanted the board to think it through and decide which way we all wanted to go.
Ready to move on?
Well, are
I
we?
think do we want to
Are
get
we
consensus
saying-
on
are we
the
going
length
to
of vote?
Consensus on
whether
yeah.
We can't vote. We can
Mhm.
we can take a poll, right? There's no vote because
Okay,
it's
a
not an
poll.
action item. So do we want,
I want to wait until we see the revised edition before I vote.
no, I think we were just talking about the length of the straight weight.
Oh, the days?
Yeah, right? That's what you wanted?
I'm not,
You wanted to get feedback from the board on whether the stray weight should change? Is that what you were asking? Yes. And I personally think it's fine the way it is.
I think we should keep the days as is.
I think the doctor was very well stated. When do we stop if we don't stop? Some of us, all of us have been on the board a long time, and us progressing into something beyond let's postpone it is very few and far between. I propose everything let us vote on the proposed ordinance so we can move on. I can have, I have been in rescue many, many years. And I've got news for you. If there is somebody that really wants their dog back, they will shoot themselves to get that dog back. If they don't want the dog, or they think they can't find the dog, then they put it to bed quickly. I totally agree with the staff members. We cannot assume the future of somebody else, because we have to look at what is now, what is ethical, what is humane, and what is financially feasible. I propose that we bring the ordinance forward and we make a decision on what it is today.
I agree with the ordinance as written, but I appreciate John asking for a poll, and I'd like to do this sort of thing more often. Thank you for getting all of our opinions.
I'm in favor of it as written.
I agree to make it as written.
With the change.
Along with the changes. Sorry.
So then do we want to do the same thing as far as taking it forward, or that was specific to, and I'm not trying to take over the meeting, Barbara, I'm sorry. That was specific to the stray hold. We could do the same thing with
Okay,
the ordinance
then,
as a whole.
can we also take a poll on the on the
Ordinance with the,
ordinance as
with the,
written?
with the revisions.
With
that
the
we
revisions noted.
Revisions.
Mhm.
So can we take a poll of the board members on the ordinance as with revisions?
I approve of the ordinance with the provisions from today.
I do as well.
I approve of the ordinance as written with corrections.
I approve.
I approve as written with revisions.
I approve as written with revisions.
Yes, the same.
I approve. And Cindy,
Same.
you get a poll as well. All right.
Yes, same.
So then, next steps, we will take this on April 2nd and hopefully get it wrapped up. I know the council's really wanting to get this done, so
All right.
thank you.
Okay, sorry. Oh, just I have a question on this now. Since it was tabled, now we did this, will we still be in line to get the grant?
The
We
grant
already
for-
had the grant. Let me rephrase that. We had the down payment of the grant. Part of the balance of that is getting this passed. It didn't have, I don't know what I say I didn't have, I don't know what the time frame was.
Second payment on the grant was upon passage of the TNR
Oh, there you go.
ordinance.
There you go.
Yes. So
So,
what we will do is get all the changes made. We'll send you out a revised copy. Make sure everything's good before we send it on to city council. Yeah, okay. She just emailed it to me, so I'll clean it up, get it all sent out to you.
Well, then, in that case, we are ready to move on to workshop item B, and Cindy King.
so on policy updates, one of the things I want to point out is that there has been extensive training over the past year. And this training is driving new guidelines and procedures based on lessons learned. So I actually finished a almost year-long class, as we had talked about. But just so y'all are aware, the courses that I did take included a marketing development, leadership, shelter operations, community programs, and animal health and clinical operations. This was, each one of these was a 6-week module that I finished. And I did finish it last 2 weeks ago. So that has been done. So that's the shelter management certification course. And then there are 4 of us that also have taken the behavior management certification course that Kelly Bolin put on. She is a certified animal behavioral consultant. That was an 8-week course. That was a very in-depth training that we did. So 4 of us have completed it. It was Paige, Mike Dravis, Ashley Kasperi, and myself. And the other thing is, it hasn't been put forward, but we had let y'all know that I had done the local rabies, Jennifer and I had done the local rabies control authority training with dishes. But the other thing is I had also taken the certified animal control officer class. So I am also a certified animal control officer with the state. So there's been a lot of information that we have absorbed as we move forward with updating policies and guidelines. So what you see on the screen is a lot. We are providing all board members with multiple resources that we have used throughout all of this training. It's not all of the resources, but we have provided you with some of it. These resources are what are on your thumb drive. This is actually just links. You will have some PDF files on your thumb drive also. There are some really good videos, especially the 2 listed at the top regarding behavioral training. But these resources are also going to be shared online on our animal advisory board page. And it'll be a sub-page with links within that page. So y'all have it on a thumb drive. Susie and Shelley will get it to you. Oh, never mind. Jennifer's on top of it. She already got it to y'all, so y'all already have it. But anyway, so just so y'all are aware, there's a lot of really good references here for understanding why we're doing some of the things we're doing. So as we said, policy updates are based on lessons learned from multiple personnel taking these courses. At this point in time, we are updating several different policies. We are going to move forward with committees with them. But at this point, we are going to be, like I said, we are going to be doing it based on the information and the knowledge we have gained from our classes. I don't have details on them right now. They are a work in process at this point. So wrapping this up, our ordinance for our next steps are going to be that we take this to City Council consideration of Ordinance 2330. We will present it at City Council for its first reading on April 2nd. Because it was tabled, this is going to be the first reading, and then the second reading will be April 16th. And on that last, where it talks about notice of enactment, because a fee is involved, when we talk about the aggressive dog fee and also the sterilization fee, because there are fees involved, it has to be posted for 30 days prior to us implementing a fee system, but the ordinance can still go into place. So even though we won't be able to charge those fees for the first 30 days, the ordinance can still go into place once it's passed.
That was relative to the fines,
Correct.
the fines, not the fees.
Oh, I'm sorry, fines, not fees.
So
No,
we
it's
can-
also the aggressive.
It is the fees as well.
Yes, the
Okay.
aggressive dog fees were also, yes.
Okay.
Hey Cindy, were we not charging for any registration for aggressive or dangerous dogs?
We charge for a dangerous dog. There was nothing we didn't, aggressive is new. Aggressive is new, which is why there's a new fee for it. There's a fee and then there's a renewal fee. So we did for dangerous. We have no dangerous dogs in the city of Sugar Land that are registered. We have no dangerous dogs currently in the city of Sugar Land, just FYI. We don't have any that are paying fees and they have not been deemed dangerous per state. So for the guidelines, the policies next step, The subcommittee, as we have it, includes John, Jenna, Robin, Dr. Bender, and myself. So we just need to confirm that that's going to be our subcommittee. With that being said, we will meet and we will review feedback. Once we will meet and review the policies, and then updates per the committee feedback will be completed by May 1st. I put that in as a date so we know when it's going to be done. And then we will present the final recommendation to the Animal Advisory Board on May 10th. So that helps us wrap us up, helps us wrap it up having defined dates.
Hey, Susie? Susie, weren't you on this committee too?
I don't think so. I mean, I thought I stepped in and somebody stepped out. I'm happy to be on it, but I thought it was full.
You can't have any more or you have a quorum.
We can only have 5 on the committee. I did check with Dawn. We had a conversation. Susie was on it at one point, and I believe you took her spot. Something, I don't know. We tried to trace it through. So to follow up on that, on the May 10th agenda, I'm going to put an item on the agenda to discuss subcommittees and how we need to use them and what committees we need to have and who to be on them. So be thinking about that. There were 4 committees for this board that I know were used extensively over the last 2 years when we needed the board's fingerprints on everything. I don't know if we're still at that point. And so for the efficiency of doing things, I think we need to revisit that discussion. And then we've had some changes in the board. So if we're going to do subcommittees, we need to, I think, reappoint the new subcommittees and members. So think about that. We'll have that discussion in May.
Any questions?
Okay. As we've talked through all these things today, and this, you may say that this refers back to the first ordinance that we spoke about, but if a small dog attacks a larger dog, so is the aggressor, the small dog is the aggressor, the initiator of contact, and a large dog engages, but because it is a large dog, is capable of causing more harm, who would be the aggressive dog?
Probably
And
the
let's
one that
say it does
instigated.
cause harm.
The one that instigated, but then you're gonna have, I mean, there's gonna be an investigation on it. It's not like this dog hurt some dog and it's immediately aggressive. It's gonna be a process of an investigation, just like there is for a dangerous dog. There's gonna be witness statements. There's gonna be, whether it's video footage or whatever the case may be, it'll be a full investigation. It's not just a matter of, because this one's big, it attacked, or because this one's big, it's fault.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other questions, the next meeting
Is May 10th?
is May 10th, 2023,
Not 2024.
or 2024. Oh my
24,
gosh, I'm
yes.
sorry.
And we will have the subcommittee meetings between now and then. It gives roughly
6 weeks. I
5
think.
weeks, 4 weeks, because we want to be wrapped up by the beginning of May.
Correct.
And I will not be participating on the subcommittee because it would create a quorum. So you just be meeting with Cindy on that. So-
Then,
I move we adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. we
My
are
mic was on. It
adjourned.
was easy.
Thank you.
Thank you to the public for attending today. We do appreciate your feedback.